basically saying this is how far it can go. They might be able to go through ethnic cleansing if they, use those threats the day after or something like that. That's what I took it as.
Yes, but the IDF are soldiers that are Israelis, okay? Even if attack Israel society in order to attack the government. And there is a separation between the government and the citizens. And when you talk about the IDF is me, my nephews, my friends, my brothers, my sister, my mother, my father. We were all IDF, okay? So this is where I draw the line. There are leftists, there are right-wingers, there are extreme right, there are extreme left, they are all in the military. And believe me, if it would be an order to ethnically cleanse, it's not Gentry's government, it's not Smotrich government. This order is illegal, and the army is a legal, moral army, and not of this, we have the Supreme Court, which is an independent body. So what he's saying is half true, meaning it's true by the part that maybe Smotrich wanted. I'm sure that Smotrich wanted, and Ben-Gvir wants it, okay? I'm sure. It doesn't mean anything. Even if you say both of them together, yes.
Wait, real quick. So you're basically saying that, let's say IDF soldiers eventually ended up getting instructions like this that says take all the Palestinians out of Gaza, force them on a boat and go somewhere. You're saying that they would object to
100%. 120%.
They have like a system where every direct order that comes from a superior is discussed and debated specifically whether or not to follow that order. Literally every order that comes up.
Listen, I think that sometimes in any military commander or whoever gives an order, and it could be something that's a terrible thing, illegal, whatever. But this is less an order, but more like a huge undertaking, right? Like this isn't just like, oh, we're gonna invade a town, or you're like doing a huge project here. And honestly, in my opinion, I would think they might do that. I mean, if they were told to do it and this becomes like an official policy, I could see that happening. I'm actually shocked because I thought this was like something that was like popular or common. I'm shocked that you guys are like offended by it, to be honest.
It's not offended because it's not true, it's a blood libel. And I understand that he hates Netanyahu, which is a completely legitimate stand, especially in a democracy. But to use this, to defame the IDF, it's insane. At the end, if this is the command that would go to the chief, the chief of staff, he's not a political figure. Okay, this is why he was also kicked out now because of the religious drafting, whatever. This command is illegal, and yes, it will go to the Supreme Court, and yes, there will be people that will not be volunteering to the army. Most of the army is reservists that can say, we're not coming anymore. Fuck you. The reason that they are fighting, let me just finish it, the reason that the IDF is fighting is because they believe in the cause.
Yes. How many IDF do
Yeah, let's forget, Jack. The goals of this war, Jack, are to get the hostages. You're putting the cart before the horse. You're totally neglecting October 7th, Jack. It's like you're just a political spin artist.
I don't know why you say stuff like this, but I was gonna say,
I know you got red lines that can't be crossed, but you can only cross the red lines like on October 7th. We have red lines you can't cross, but we cross red lines all the time.
That was the first thing we talked about when I came on stage, and we moved on to something else. This October 7th room, we can talk about that all day, but I was
Great, let's talk about the ethnic cleansing then, and how there's ulterior motives to this war. You're full of shit, Jack.
Daniel, question. You said in the IDF there's like people from all sides of the political aisle. Is it possible that if that command ever came down to do that, there would be enough soldiers to heed that command? What do you think?
No, because the unfit ethic code that as an IDF soldier you must comply to. Otherwise, this is one of the first things that you learn in basic training in the army. Every soldier, which I think is a bit unique, is to refuse an order. Okay, this is something that we learn at the basic training of every soldier is to refuse orders that are illegal. Meaning that if my commander tells me, let's say shoot the civilian, or take this person which is not a threat, that I am ordered to refuse the order. And if I do comply with the order, I am complicit and I could be charged. And the Supreme Court, like, I think people cannot associate or try to look at Israel as an authoritarian regime that everything is the same. No, they would appeal to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court would say that it's illegal, and people would be not going to the army, and people would refuse to go to reserve, and it would not work.
Also,
I'm surprised.
also, the particular people you want is like generals. You want to have specific, because those are the guys that would have the scope, like you're saying, to exercise the ethnic cleansing or genocide. The drums, the captains would have to answer to the generals. If a general had the meaning of like, yeah, I totally want to ethnically cleanse, genocide all the Palestinians, then you would have like a general to work with. They could work behind the scenes. It would be probably a scandal if anyone tried anything like that. But the people you look at would be the generals. They're mostly like lefties by design. Israel's kind of firm about like keeping the rightists out of the ruling part of the army. They don't want the rightists up there.
So what would happen if like the Ben-Gurirs and the Smotriches of Israel wanted actual ethnic cleansing? Because I honestly didn't think like it would be that crazy of a deal to the IDF because of something like Trump's then. So I figured this would be like whatever. But would you?
Trump did say, I think it
I swear. So what do you think would happen if they did make the threat that hey, we'll collapse this government if you don't do this? What do you think would happen? They would collapse it, or do you think Netanyahu would be like, no, I want to stay in power. Let's take out.
What do you think when the government?
They cannot do it. They would have to they would have to leave the government because Netanyahu does not have the authority to order something like this.
This is sort of like the way democracy locks up everyone into aspiring towards consensus. They're stuck. They have to. That's the only way to maintain power.
And you think that if the government falls, like the coalition ends or the war stops? The war doesn't stop. The war doesn't stop till the hostages are returned.
No, I don't think the war would stop either. Just it would be a vacuum, power vacuum, I guess, or
I mean, it would be a civil war. Like, they would probably be fighting themselves and organize into some kind of movement because someone would attack them and then they would have to defend themselves. It would be exactly like Israel 1.0.
And right now, actually, there is a threat that the government will fall and that we will have an election in the coming October. And what about the drafting of the religious people? Not about ethnically cleansing anything. It's like internal things.
Yeah.
And which are legal, which you can agree with or not agree with, that what you get. What Egan was suggesting was something which is a crime. And by the way, Trump didn't say anything about forcibly removing or ethnically cleansing. He was talking about offering them opportunities for whoever wants to live, which is not a crime. But this is not something the IDF is doing.
Well, I know that. But what do you guys, forget ethnic cleansing, what do you guys think about settlements in Gaza? Do you think that's a realistic political reality for Israel?
I tell you why not. Because of the security threat. I don't think that anyone would be willing to send their children to die in Gaza to protect settlement unless it's safe. And I don't see how it would be safe. Right now, especially. It would be just like continuous attacks on the soldiers and those communities.
I mean, why we're seeing pockets of protests in Gaza against Hamas?
It doesn't mean, the fact that they hate Hamas doesn't mean that they like us. Don't be confused. They hate the oppression of their leaders. It doesn't, but they still hate Israel. They just, they see the reality that Hamas is launching rockets from their refugee tents, and Hamas is stealing the food. They know the reality of the ground. But we are trying to extol it, but it's really hard because everybody's saying, no, Hamas is wonderful and Israel is blocking aid and all that bullshit. But the people on the ground actually know what's going on, and they see who's oppressing them, and this is why they're saying that, when they get aid, thank you Netanyahu, thank you Trump, down with Hamas, down on Hamas. but they don't
You
have
know
a lot of
what's,
represent.
for me, I think, to myself, why is the Oslo Accords not being followed? The Oslo Accords should be followed by the Arabs, and it seems like after that, they just didn't want to go ahead with that plan. That plan was the best plan that they had, and at the time, their government officials wanted that plan. He comes
Now
to
you're taking us down a whole nother rabbit hole.
Don't interrupt.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Hold on and don't interrupt, okay?
It's a joke, don't worry.
No, you're good. That's my point. I'm trying to figure out when they had a solution and both sides agreed on the solution. Why was this not taken up by the Palestinians? Why was this not enforced? Why did
If
it
you
turn
want
out?
the Palestinian perspective, I can give it to you, but
Go ahead.
it's not. So there's so many different eras of this deal, right? Like of negotiating for peace and a two-state solution and all this stuff. During the negotiations, there was violence happening. There was settlements being built. There was Hamas attacking Israeli like markets and restaurants. There was Baruch Goldstein, mowing down Palestinians in a mosque. There was all these horrible things in which both leaders came out and condemned and said, this does not represent us. We don't, Baruch Goldstein is not Zionism. That these attacks on the Navarro pizza shop is condemned, and both sides try to condemn these things. In my opinion, the reason it felt like on our end, this deal was never going to go through. We recognized Israel, and there's still being settlements being built, and these negotiations are not in good faith. This was the thought process at the time. And ever since then, in the second Intifada, there hasn't been like a real opportunity. There's times where Omer almost made a deal, but at that said, he didn't have a chance to look it over, and then Omer went to jail. Like, there's all these little things that happen. But in my mind, personally, I think you have to deal with the aspect of a Likud party and a Hamas, which both happened to come to power in the 2000s and stay in power for a long time.
Every
So
time
the
false equivalence.
so Hamas. No, I'm just talking about their positions on these certain negotiations. Forget everything else. Hamas wants a river to the sea, and the Likud party's foundational charter says we're going to be in control of river to the sea, and there won't be a Palestinian state. We won't compromise for that due to whatever security, whatever reason. So these two, you need the two right people in Israel and on the Palestinian side to be in power at the same time, and time. And those things I think never happen. To have like a good, genuine, good faith negotiation.
Yeah. Could you tell me, please, after 48, after all armies tried to destroy Israel, do you think that Israel still must sit on a table and make a proposal to take some land for Palestinians?
I think if the Israeli leadership, whoever it is at the time, wants safety, security, and peace for their future generations and not have to live in, October 7th or people being killed when at pizza shops or buses or in the West Bank, that if they don't do that, they have to deal with the population of Palestinians that are still there and still don't have a permanent solution. So
Either give us what we want, which is our own state, and give us a lot of what you got, or we'll keep killing you. That's what he just told you.
Absolutely. He's speaking threats. If you're not gonna give
I'm
us
not
some
making a threat. I'm just giving you my perspective of what I think
I see.
Israel could benefit from getting peace.
Okay.
That's it.
And another question. Do you accept Muslim conception of caliphate? If you need to conquer some land, you will do this. Do you agree with this?
I'm not in support of any caliphate.
Okay. Do you agree? Okay. And you recognize the status of Israel or no?
Do I recognize the state of Israel?
Absolutely. Do you believe that Israel should exist?
Do I believe it should exist? No, but does it exist? Yeah.
Oh, okay. There is a Hamas
I don't
member.
need to.
We are speaking with with a Hamas member. What do I
No, I'm giving you my honest perspective. And does okay? I'll say it like this: does Israel need to exist in the way it does now? No. I think there's a lot of issues systemically in terms of the status quo, the situation with the occupation in the West Bank. These are big issues that I don't think, South Africa still exists even after apartheid. It just exists differently. I don't give a fuck if it's called Israel, if it's called Palestine, if it's called Judea. I don't give a fuck. The name doesn't mean anything to me, right? Like, should Palestine exist? Should Palestine exist? No, I don't believe so either. It doesn't matter.
So
If I
what
had
matters to you?
What matters to me is simply an improvement in the quality of life and opportunities for the people and the rights there, and to live in dignity.
Isn't that always like the most generic response on higher standard of living for everyone?
You can blame government that runs the people of Gaza and the people of the West Bank. You can blame them.
If you want to put it all in one group, that's
He wants wealth redistribution, everybody. He's like a 21-year-old girl at a party. When you ask her, what would you want for the world? She says, I want wealth redistribution.
The opposite. I want to combat resistance through capitalism. It's not communism.
You should be one of the people that were protesting on the streets of Gaza against Hamas. You should be one of those people.
David, stop drinking, please, for everyone's
What you're pushing for.
David can't take. David gets burned right away.
Right now in the Palestinian
But
authority in Gaza.
they don't want to be educated as you understand.
I don't think we need to like each other, Daniel. I don't even think.
I'm not talking about no. The education is not just about hating Israel. I mean, look at Israel and compare it to all the Arab countries around us. It's not just the Palestinians that are in like bad conditions. Okay, it's many Arab countries. There is a problem that is way beyond like the Zionism or Israel or Jews or whatever.
Do you want to play a hand in any of those countries? Like downfall or like bad situation? Like in Syria?
No, I actually think that if we had like happy, peaceful, productive people around us, then yes, the Middle East would be a place that people want to come and be touristy and travel here. No, I don't think making the entire Middle East into a war zone is helping anyone. So no, I don't think it's our benefit.
Yeah, and maybe if the people in those countries, whether it's Afghanistan or Iraq, if they're harboring terrorists that are going to do harm to the Western world, and then yeah, we have a right to go there and do something about it.
I don't know if you're serious or not, but the thing is, I forgot what I was gonna say. You were saying education and creating peace. I think this is what I think was a cause of instability. One of many causes, but an important one I think is during this whole Arab Israeli portion of this conflict, right? Because there's the Palestinian Israel and then there's the Arab, the whole region kind of thing. Dealing with Israel, there was
It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
okay. To me, it's split it up, but whatever.
But look at this war. We were attacked by Lebanon, by Yemen, by Palestinians, by Syria. Like, it's Arabs.
These are
Iran is not Arab. But
now it's non-state actors, pretty much, right? Like these aren't like right? Like this isn't the government. These are just like
Hamas
non-state
is the
actors in
government.
Lebanon.
Hamas is the government of Gaza. Hezbollah is part of the part of the government in Lebanon. The Houthis control half of Yemen, and Iran is the fucking government. So it is the government.
Okay, we're talking about Arab countries in the region, but whatever. Okay, let's just say it's the Arabs versus. It's all just the Arabs versus the Israelis all the time, but. In this conflict from 1948 to today, there's been ups and downs in terms of how they're going to deal with their hostilities. And initially it was, we're going to go to war, and we're going to go to war again, and we're going to go to war again. Now we're going to be a little more pragmatic. And I think pragmatism is starting to gain traction in terms of, how to deal with these hostilities with one another, with the Arabs and Israelis, especially on the Arab side, to be honest. I've seen them become way more pragmatic, and I think that's the future of the region. Like, even in Syria, right? This guy who was a terrorist, like, a few years ago, now he's the president of Syria. And listen, Israel has had a terrorist prime minister too. Yoav Shamir, right? He was in the Lehi. That was a terrorist.
It's not Shamir, no, he was.
Yeah, he is actually. Dude, he was one of the main leaders in the Lehi. How was he not a terrorist?
It was because
Oh my
terrorism
God.
is
Let-
targeting civilians in order to promote.
But the Lehi did, dude.
Okay.
What did they do?
Why Lehi established?
Wait. I'm not getting into why.
Why
I
Lehi
don't.
established?
Listen. I'm not getting into why. I don't care.
No, it's a very important question. It is a very important question. After the pogroms from the Arabs, every time Jewish people must establish a self-defense group, not resistance, self-defense group from this type of pogroms. However, the primary question here is how violence Palestine. Could you tell me?
I got a question for you.
First answer me, and then you will ask me.
What was your question?
Yeah, my question is how violence starts on this territory in Palestine. In which moment?
I'm sorry, just one second. I just need to go. I just want to say to Chad that, first of all, thank you for like a novel conversation. I think maybe it's one of the first times that we had, and it seems that when we have a novel conversation without propaganda, it seems that we can agree more than we disagree. So, I know, and I will try to come back.
But
I
Daniel,
appreciate you giving me a chance to talk. It was a good conversation.
yeah, but Daniel, you must understand that he used a takia, and he
I'm not
wanted
Israel.
No, I think he was honest.
to be on the map.
Yeah, that is fine. He can have his opinion, but it was not manipulating facts. You know, people can have their own opinion and positions. The problem is when you manipulate the facts and reality in order to support your position. With that, I have a problem.
Look at what he.
Thank you. I will try to come back soon.
Look at what Igal wrote in the chat. He says he thinks there's a current fascist in the Israeli government. Can't identify, but he thinks there's a fascist and Netanyahu is the puppet. The point is, every government is a fascist government, and we're all just ants and bees serving our governments. But it's when people pick up guns and rifles and ammunition and go to concerts and kill and take innocent victims hostage, that's when all shit breaks loose, and that's when repercussions and justice will have to be metered out. You don't win a prize for doing that. You don't get a state for doing that. That's not a political move. That's murder and breaking the law and terrorism. It's the most wicked thing you can do in your life. It's horrible. And look at the repercussions, Jack. You think it was a good strategic move? You think it was intelligent to do that?
Has anything I said today led you to believe that I would agree with that?
Yeah.
I mean, what are you listening to, comedian? I don't know if you're trolling or what, but God, mostly,
I don't think I'm trolling.
Okay, Jack, but
like, I can't tell anymore.
that's like a problem with your head. Jack, when violence starts on this territory?
During which era? The Israel, Zionism, Palestine era? Or
Listen to me closely, please. Listen to me.
there's so much violence in this land. I mean, which time are you talking about?
First violence between Arabs and Jewish people, how it starts and when?
Who initiated it? How long ago are you talking? Because we can take this back 1,000 years or
No.
100.
Listen to me closely. The first violence between Arabs and Jews. That's it. That's the question.
The first violence between Arabs and
Absolutely.
Jews.
Who started?
Geez, I don't have that off the top of my head.
Pray.
I'll have to look it up. I'll look it up right now.
Okay, it was a Nazi collaborator, Amin al-Hussein.
It wasn't Taiwan.
The Khaybar, it was a Muhammad.
Okay, that's an Arab. See, I'm trying to get a specific. I was asking you to find out what you're talking about.
I said specifically in Palestine. You must listen to me closely.
Okay,
I said
so go ahead.
specifically in Palestine. How it starts and who it starts.
think you can bring. I'll be honest. I've looked into this question a lot. There's
But why
no
do you
Lucas.
blame Israeli self-defense groups? Because of
Because
self-defense from Arabs every time.
Let me tell you. It's not the self-defense that I have an issue with. It's not the fact that we had some Jews get attacked in Jerusalem or in Safed, and now we need a defense force. That's logical. That you can understand that. The issue is the means and targets that they attacked. That's the issue. It's not the fact that they exist. That what made them a terrorist group? Why wasn't I think Haganah or Irgun wasn't a terrorist group, but there was Lehi was, and it's because they would attack civilians. They would assassinate. They would assassinate politicians, ambassadors.
Oh yeah.
They would. But that's the definition of terrorism. You gotta understand it. It's not me calling it. This is the United States.
Technically yes. Technically yes. Yes.
That's all I was saying.
Okay. But you must understand if you support some name like resistance groups or resistance from occupation or something like that, you must understand that most Israelis after October 7th think like you, yeah. And if you don't want people to be displaced from this territory, you should think about it, because most of people that hear your rhetoric or understand what you're gonna do or what you imagine on this territory, and that you are not recognized and don't believe that Israel should exist, you must understand that there is a lot of Jewish people who think like you after October 7th, because you are a big threat.
Yeah, even before October 7th.
Yeah,
a lot of people
and I must be fair with you, okay? I must be fair with you, because if Jewish people today understand what's the threat, and the threat is very close to your borders, you will know, okay? Sometimes war is not and maybe the methods you will not like. Just be prepared.
Well, of course. I mean, listen, the Israeli military is a regional superpower, right? I'm not an idiot, right? Like, I know what Palestinians are up against in terms of if you want to take this to a war.
Wait, you're not an idiot?
Right? Like, that's not a hard concept to grasp. But, all I was saying with the original point was that you guys have prime minister who was once considered a terrorist.
Respectful.
And things are changing like that.
Sort
in the
of
Middle
calm.
East, so,
The founders of America were also terrorists, and they became a government in and on, right? So
That's right.
Sort of
right,
calm.
the changes were one of the disadvantages
Sort
we have,
of.
like, living in the 21st century is things are so fast. It's a great disadvantage, right? We don't have that, right? What are people going to say in 100 years or 200 years, right? So the fact that somebody might have started their career as a terrorist or ended as well is not proof positive of anything, right? Because Arafat was trying to stop being a terrorist too, right? Because all the people involved were trying, at a certain point, we're trying to move forward, right? Exactly. I mean, like, that's a good word to use, legit, right? So we can't delegitimize it going backwards once the system has already kind of changed moving forward, right? Now you're already in a new system. You could. I don't think that's like a very honest move, but you could.
Yeah, and by the way, when I say do I want Israel to exist? That's not my number one preference. Do I care if it exists? No, I don't care. It can exist 10 times.
I mean, Caleb, how can you say the founding fathers were terrorists and not liberators, though?
No, stop. Right, so, because we can use words accurately, without having that to be loaded, right? Like, we can use accurate terminology.
I'm just saying, when you read about the lives of the people who signed the Constitution, they don't sound like terrorists to me. They sound like godly people and good people who fought for liberty and justice and against tyranny. So I just find it kind of personally offensive when you say they were terrorists. I know you're trying to make the point prospectively. I get it.
Okay, so thanks for getting my point and
Do you
undermining it.
think blowing up a hotel with people in it is not a terrorist act? Like, you can commit terrorism.
But to your point, Jack, to your point about what you just said, nobody's trying to turn Palestinians into Zionists. Minimally, we're trying to get you to the point where you don't care if we're there or not. Literally. And, right? Like that would be just fine, and we would take that if Palestine was prepared to be an apathetic. We prefer an apathetic neighbor, right?
Oh, this is the thing, Caleb.
That would be great.
This is the thing, though. You say that, but then... Wait. I would love that. And I can do that if you stop coming to the little territory we have left and building more settlements and moving hundreds of thousands of people to live. Like, you guys always say, like, leave us alone. I want to, but you keep moving right next to me. You know what I mean? It's like...
So, Jack, for 40 years or more, right? Anybody who's still holding on to the two-state solution is holding on to basically the exact same frameworks, which have to do with stopping settlements, withdrawal from large settlement blocks, 1967 borders, territory swaps, these kinds of things. These, as far as I understand, in the world that is still talking about any legitimate two-state solution, that is still the conversation, right? So,
is it realistic anymore? Because
it is not.
Whatever solves this shit permanently. But
It is not realistic today, and it is not realistic tomorrow. But that's because everybody has bad governance, right? When everybody has better governance, then you can have something serious. It's like a simple thing, but I think that's true.
If they were just two functional governments that could speak to each other civilly, it would be child's play.
Yeah, it would be easy to do.
That's what I was saying earlier, there needs to be a third party to force a solution, and I'm not talking about forcing with a gun, but, the United States, or as someone who's a world power comes and says, I want to guarantee security for both of you. I want you both to, shut the fuck. The world wants to move on from this, and everyone else does on both sides.
Yeah.
So there needs to be, I don't think Israelis and Palestinians can solve this on their own because, like we said, bad governance, no one can talk to each other and be reasonable, so someone else should just fucking come and force it.
Yeah, that's what they were trying to
That'd be
No,
nice.
but that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen either. But yeah,
Maybe to Libya.
no, that's not.
You know what
that's not
Gaddafi
viable.
said? You know what Gaddafi said to the PLO?
What?
You want Jerusalem so bad, I'll build you a Jerusalem here in Libya.
Good, finally, go do that.
But it was a
Yeah, but
joke,
that guy-
but it was like,
But how are you going to trust that guy? He lived in tent.
dude, the guy is one of the
Never
worst
trust
things
people
that
who live
happened to
in-
Palestinians anyways, but...
Listen, it's I'm gonna shut down the room. It's been actually quite a very good room for the last number of hours, but I have to go and I don't trust to leave it in the house Hanson. Respectfully. But please, seriously, let's never go to Amir's room ever again. I know it's entertaining.
I'm blocked from going to this room, so
I know it's entertaining, but it's just toxic and not
Yeah,
serious.
it's toxic.
And we had a very serious, good conversation here.
But I reject your claim that you can't trust me, Caleb. I don't go to concerts, kidnap people, and murder people. That's just me. I like to go to concerts and enjoy music like you do. I like to listen to the Grateful Dead. I like fish.
Yeah.
Even though no girls go to fish, I still like
Nargis, You
fish.
showed up too late, Nargis.
Did she though?
Showed up too late. I'm closing it down, but we'll do it again. Okay? This was Daniel's room actually. So, because I gotta go, so
Ooh, you know what? I'm gonna keep it
I'm
going.
a respect-
Guess what, Caleb? I just committed a what's it called? A coup d'état. I just coup
That
d'état
was
the
a
room.
terrorist act.
Whoa! Wow, my first official act as a clubhouse pirate. I'm not going to shut down the room. We're going to keep this room open for 24 hours. And we're going to call it the 24-hour Ultimate Israel-Palestine Debate Room! It's in my head, right, Mixed-Ed? Right? I know you like to say the word right all the time. Right? 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 Right. 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 Here we go. Right. Okay, that's what we'll call the room, actually. Right. I don't trust comedian, huh? Well, maybe you were right. Maybe you were right, Caleb, but you didn't pull the trigger fast enough. Don't delay pulling that trigger, Caleb, because, you know, your enemy will get the upper hand on you.
Jindib is another terrorist.
Ooh, Jindib? Yeah, we can tell by the keffiyeh. And that great hairline.
True terrorist.
Any man with that much hair clearly has to be fake.
To put me a terrorist. You ever put me a terrorist?
You are a terrorist.
Your mother is a terrorist for bringing you to this
You're
world.
Ooh, I know this one. Hi, Jindib. How are you today? Living your best life?
I think my mother's bad. Wait until you get
Yeah. How are
Yeah, you guys think I'm crazy. Wait till you meet my
I kill
mom.
you. He said I kill you. Yeah?
Who said that? Jindib?
first.
No. There was there was a multiplication with Ahmed the terrorist. There was like, the short film after 9/11. Yeah, and he said Allahu Akbar and I kill you. I don't know if you saw this.
So, Jindib, let's give you a shot. If we were to make you the king of the Middle East, what would you do to create a better balance and less violence?
Off with their heads. If I was made the king of the Middle East, well, you make me and then I'll show you.
What was that?
Once I am the king of the Middle East, then
Oh, I see. So you don't have any you can't use your imagination to come up with some type of creative solution?
no, I have no imagination now.
Oh, really? The war has crushed your imagination and all your dreams?
Yeah, just
Right. Well, welcome back to Right, everybody. This is the follow-up response room to the past 6 hours of Daniel motor-mouthing against Aziz, against Jack, against Mikhail, Cynic in the chat. It's been an exciting journey yet again here on Clown House of people showing us what they got.
Did you just call it Clown House? I like that. Pretty good.
All the terrorists was here. That's great.
Again, it's kind of like a public speaking contest. Some people get A's, some B's, some C's, some D's, some are F's.
Can I ask you a question? How do you think will Jindib love the new place in Libya?
I think he actually might, because you have to have air conditioning in Libya. And a lot of people in the modern world, like in Germany, for example, they don't even use air conditioning. But it's very hot in those stuffy old apartments. So I think if they go to a did I just do a Freudian slip there? If they go to some type of holding facility with air conditioning, I think they're going to be very happy.
Yeah, we will feel right at home.
Alhamdulillah, you will be in Libya, brother. God save you.
Jindib, would you go fight in Gaza if you could right now?
Absolutely not.
Why?
Would you go fight in Gaza right now if you're giving the chance?
But they are your brothers.
Yeah, I'd fight in Gaza. Okay, go. I know. Just here. You people are fucking idiots.
Okay, Jindib, if you had $1 million, if you won the lottery and you got $1 million, how much would you send to a Gaza relief agency?
Not a penny. And what's the million?
Wow! Not only are you a coward, you're cheap.
He's a good man.
Very frugal.
Genocidal cause. What's wrong with that?
No, talking about food relief efforts for the Gazans to help feed them.
Yeah, using genocidal people. It's dangerous.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought you were saying the Jews were the genocide people.
No. He doesn't want to support Palestine. Palestine because he'd be only contributing to people supporting themselves to kill others. Like, as far as charitable donations, maybe just give the bum a sandwich and don't give money to the Palestinians.
Jindid, when a homeless person is begging on the street and they're screaming out, "Anybody got any change? I need some change." Are they talking metaphysically or literally?
A little both.
Probably just, if they want change, they just want to change. Maybe they want to change of diapers or change of clothes or change of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's mostly diapers. Or bikers.
You know, maybe like a place to sleep at night, you know, like a little one-bedroom bath, you know, or a studio with a shared bathroom even. I mean, do you know what a single-room occupancy is, Jindid?
No, not really.
A single-room occupancy is a room with a closet and a bed and a desk. And then you share the bathroom with about 20, 30 other men in the morning prior to going to work. It's like a homeless shelter for poor people, basically.
It's more European, don't it?
Yeah, in Europe, that's more common.
So I'm just wondering, do you think they're going to build a bunch of SROs in Gaza? And do you think they'll be on Airbnb by maybe December of next year?
What do you mean, like the tent city they have?
That's an idea, though. Okay, I like your comedy show.
Like, how do all the
It's like for
titles...
them, I guess they can't complain.
You
What are
know,
we talking about?
we're talking about real estate law because like all these estates, all these titles to the property, the land, like it's all been burned up or they took it with them. Like how is it all going to go down when the conflict, you know, ends and people are like, that was my fucking street corner over there.
We're talking about East Harlem or Gaza?
Talking about Gaza.
Harlem.
That's a joke.
East Harlem, okay. I'm sure East Harlem has a very prime real estate.
Actually, yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Appreciating them.
New York.
I mean, it is Manhattan.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as someone who spent some time in GIS systems, geographic information systems, they have so many aerial photos that they can figure out like where the street corners were and where all the buildings were in each of the buildings. Then they have to map it onto any property plans that they have. But
That's actually true, yeah. Actually, everything is documented and it's...
right, I'm saying, but you know, you can put stakes in the ground based on GPS coordinates of where the streets were, where the corners were, and then you can map it onto the documents. That's my point.
That's not that hard to figure out.
It's going to take some time. Don't get me wrong, it's not simple, but it can be done.
I'm just saying things will never go back to the way they were. Like it will never go back to the way it was. People won't probably be made whole. And people will have lost everything in this conflict. Because guess what happens in war? You lose everything.
Yes.
Yeah, look at what happened to Berlin after World War II.
I was just thinking about that.
Right.
The people who owned it were not the people who lived in it after the war. Some of it.
Right. Now imagine if McZed just started saying left all the time instead of right.
I tell my wife when we're driving, say correct, because I say to her, should I make a left here? And she says right. And then I start to make a right turn, and she yells at me. I said, just say correct instead of right.
Or you could use UPS or GPS, sorry.
No, but you know, sometimes you don't have GPS on, we're driving around the neighborhood, she goes, oh, make a left. Should I make a left? Right. So we finally, after many years, got it down to correct.
I have found that, you know, people generally take like the most accessible streets, or the, you know. Anyways, the point is, what I'm trying to say is like I have essentially found little routes around my area that saved me so much time, but it's all through residential neighborhoods because there's so much construction. It's staying off these main roads where there's huge backups. It's like, right?
No, that's what happens when you complain that America's infrastructure is degrading. Delays.
Here's a bridge down the street from my house. It's about to collapse, and trains go over it every single day. Not a care in the world. Concrete slabs are falling to the ground. It's just nobody gives a shit. I'm telling you, like, the city of Chicago is run by a clown. He could give two shits about the safety of the infrastructure. He could give two shits about the safety of the citizens on the trains where homeless criminals and drug addicts abuse and kill you. I mean, there's no concern at all for the taxpayers, the voters. It's all about social equity, social justice now.
What's your platform going to be when you run for Congress?
I'm attacking the other candidate hard on the debt and vaccines, as well as property taxes, income taxes in the state of Illinois. He doesn't fight for the citizens of his district. He simply is nothing but a big bill pusher for his lobbyists who have given him over $10 million.
Well, the Chicago mayor only has, what, a 7% approval rating, so it can't get any worse than that.
Wow. No, he's not running for mayor.
I'm running for
Well,
Congress.
maybe you should run for mayor.
I will actually if I don't win Congress.
Right, I could be mayor.
Yeah! That's from Back to the Future, right?
Last night in New York, we didn't have a Democratic debate on the issues. We had a Democratic debate on Cuomo. Cuomo attacked him. I think it actually worked to his advantage.
Well, Cuomo's going to be the next mayor. Everyone knows that.
Pretty much, yeah. What?
Because Cuomo's running in New York, not Chicago.
He is.
I'm voting for David
pivoted
Carreras.
Briefly to New York quickly.
Yeah, we should have. People don't usually talk about Chicago that much without realizing that it's not New York, so it's pretty.
Oh, it's like New York in many ways.
That piece of shit that killed us. The piece of shit
You know,
that.
I used to think Chicago was a flyover state, and then I actually had to spend
Chicago's
a year and a half there, and it is like really nice. I enjoyed it.
It's not a state.
You know that piece of shit that killed.
I like
I
the
meant
way
like I would never touch down in Chicago. Like I would just keep on going to LA. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I would only stop in Chicago just for work. Otherwise, no, I wouldn't go there.
I don't blame you. But the food, honestly, here is pretty good, and I'm suffering a gout flare-up right now to prove it.
Yeah, no, I want to explore Chicago. Sounds like one of the big cities.
Yeah, there's where my sailboat is at. The skyline is truly amazing, and you know, they used to call it the White City, and they used to call it the Republic of Chicago.
And they have that very big Trump Tower. It's a big monstrosity.
Yeah, they just made the building give over $6.5 million because of you know, they endangered the fish in the river that it's on.
Well, maybe they should stop making it green.
These lawyers really know how to shake you down. Let me tell you, it's a license to steal.
Of course, they're very good at it too. And they rob you legally, right?
What do you think Hamas's lawyers are, you know, what kind of communication do you think the lawyers at Hamas are sending, you know, to the lawyers over at the other side of the battle zone?
They're issuing press releases for the United Nations.
Does Hamas have lawyers? I didn't know that.
Sure,
Yeah.
you don't think they're educated people? What did you think they were? Just like a bunch of, you know...
No, they're pretty educated. I'm not sure they have lawyers.
You never thought they had fucking lawyers in the Palestinian population? Are you that stupid?
No, I mean Hamas. Do they have lawyers?
Yeah, you don't think it's a fucking fully, you know, functioning government? You think it's just a bunch of, like, you know, jihadists running around trying to, you know, control the food supply so they can manipulate the population, so they can try to achieve some type of political stalemate?
That's what I thought, bro.
No, they got lawyers, Harvard-educated lawyers, Stanford-educated lawyers, Princeton, Yale, Brown, you name it, Jindib, they've got lawyers.
Oxford.
Oxford.
They've got Amal Clooney working for them.
Yeah, I mean, why don't they issue some type of, like, you know, incredible research paper about, you know, human psychology and, you know, advances in, you know, creating peace here on Earth?
They do. They issue papers. I just recently read law review article that was published by News that was, you know, reframing the history of Palestine and trying to be pro-Palestinian.
No!
They have people. Like, first of all, the Jews are small. Remember that, 0.2%. They're like a billion deep in terms of, like, religious, ethnic people interested in this particular conflict. It's like, it would be insane for them to have no legal standing, no reporting infrastructure, no media, no languages, no means of communication, while the Jews with like 0.2% have like a global presence. It's impossible. Come on, man. Of course they have lawyers. Everyone's got lawyers.
No, they don't.
Then how do they get funds from Qatar? Who's the one organizing it?
Netanyahu.
Ingrid Qatar? Is that
Yes.
what Qatar does?
That's
Qatar is their banker to deal with Hamas for them? Or do they rely on an attorney when
No,
they're
that's-
dealing with murderers?
Netanyahu must have been the hero.
Everyone has lawyers.
I think I need a lawyer.
Yes, you do.
Everyone needs good representation. So, Mixed, what do you think about Gaza, and what about the Uniform Code of Military Justice, or what is the Israeli Uniform Code of Military Justice with regards to, hostilities and taking actions and targeting and all those things? Like, is it thoroughly defined on what you can and can't do, to civilians?
Isn't
And
it
so?
used to be MJ International?
I think it adopts some things from the Versailles Treaty and all these other things, but I'm just saying that does Israel must have their own military, judicial system?
Yeah, no. They have their own rules of engagement, like the personal rules you set up for when to engage in conflict, how to do so, when you do. Israel has all that, but UCMJ is a level above that. Right? That's international standards that the world will judge you by. So most, liberal democracies have standards that are better than the UCMJ standards. UCMJ standards are more for international, the way Israeli soldiers, the IDF, treats Palestinians in the occupied territories. That would fall under UCMJ because that's not technically actual part of Israel under the IDF. They have to kind of straddle the fence because they have to maintain it like an occupying military, which they have been since '67. But they don't want to actually conquer it, which is illegal. Which is why they're stuck there officiating. They function as judges and kings because the West Bank and Gaza were abandoned by Jordan and Egypt in the '67 war.
Wait. So Israel still treats the West Bank as an occupied territory?
The West Bank is an occupied territory.
Well, how come they're still building homes on lands and stuff?
You can do that in an occupied territory. There's nothing that stops you from occupation from building a house.
On someone else's land, it's occupied territory, right?
Occupied territory means that a sovereign that has legitimacy in one territory is, for one reason or another, in someone else's land and keeping their army there. Israel's justification for occupying the West Bank is that when the West Bank and Gaza when they had the two-state model from '48, they literally say, you could shoot a bullet, and the bullet would fly across the land of Israel and go into the land of Palestine before it landed in Israel, because the land of it was so narrow in some places. But their argument was that it was undefensible, and as a result, they occupied it because when the '67 war broke out, they needed to occupy it for military stability. And once they did, Jordan and Egypt withdrew, leaving the citizens there and leaving them no sovereignty, no system of organization. Israel negotiated and tried to give them back the West Bank and Gaza, but they never came to terms, which is why since '67, Israel has been occupying that territory to defend itself from Jordan and Egypt, and they've been stuck officiating the management of the place because the Palestinians haven't gotten around to developing their own, which Israel tries to encourage them to do, but they're really interested in resistance, so it's hard for them to grow and unite in a coalition to form a government. So they're stuck. It sucks. Anyone who looks at it goes oh, it's your fault. You're all idiots. It sucks for them.
When you say that Israel occupies territory, whose territory is it occupying?
They're occupying the regions that the Palestinians inhabit.
They occupy something that does not belong to any state.
Yes.
Really? You sure?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. If a state...
Because I just ChatGPT'd it, and it says no. It's what's called terra nullius. Basically, land belonging to no one, and it cannot be under international law. It cannot be considered an occupation legally. It's sort of an acquisition. I mean, the idea is that Israel basically is the only sovereign under international law that can. It's not completely annex its territory, but just establish
Yeah, that's right. So once they're done the war.
Right,
But then they have to do the physical, which is why they haven't annexed.
yeah, well, I agree on that one. Yeah, obviously, I mean, the issue is that, I mean, if we occupy that, then we have a lot more being in the US than we had before. But, I mean, legally, under international law, it's not really anybody's land, right? So, I mean, except for Israel, because within the state, it's the territory in which it was established, and Israel was established in that territory when it declared independence, right?
Yeah, no, Israel has sites on that land. They want it. That doesn't change the fact that other people have a claim to it and have been
Oh,
occupied.
they can, but Israel is the only power in the world that can grant them this land if they want to.
No, that's not true.
It's associated from this land, they can do it.
That's not true. Israel's not the only power in the world that can grant themselves. I'd say the only real power in the world that can grant them sovereignty is themselves. They have to organize and prove it to whatever standard.
No, not since the Declaration of Independence. You cannot declare sovereignty, in another state's territory.
Since what Declaration of Independence? America's?
Israel's, yeah.
Since Israel's Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
Why does Palestine care about Israel's Declaration of Independence?
Because it's Israel's territory. The euro, right? Not de facto. We don't
Israel
literally
about Palestinian regulations when they declared independence?
Well, again, that's what I'm saying. Very go to the UN relations, right? That's what it's called. It's principle in international law. When they declared independence, the independence is within the borders of the territory that was there.
This is not the case of discovered land. We're not talking about America.
So if Palestinians declare independence,
Discovered land. No.
Okay.
so if Palestinians declare independence, so what does that mean?
You're saying that the land is ownerless.
You're saying if you assume that it was ownerless, that's not an occupation, but it's actually not ownerless.
Yeah, I was just saying that you don't call anything ownerless, especially not a people thing. That's a weird thing to fiction. But the occupation is the thing. And so you justify it.
The genocide is there, the colonialism is there, you can just throw words in here and say it's there, right? But legally, under international law, it's not really. That's what I'm saying. This is the weird part.
So what happens? So what happens when
you have Egypt and you have Jordan, right?
Okay, so
that actually accept the borders of Israel. And
so what happens?
These treaties, they actually, under international law, they are the ones that these treaties with Jordan and Egypt, they are the ones that define the borders of Israel.
Right.
And this is the only way that you can define border, right? Because you have these treaties with no country that accepts the border. Right?
It strengthens your border claim if the country next to you agrees with you.
That's how the international law works. You have to have an agreement, right, with another country, and then the border is established. Otherwise, you can just draw a main line on the map and say this is the border. Right?
So what happens when Palestinians declare independence? So what happens when Palestinians declare independence?
I mean, they can do whatever they want. I mean, it's Israel. If Israel does not accept it, it doesn't work.
The Palestinians don't accept Israel's declaration of independence, is it?
Well, nobody cares about that. It's already established.
Right, but nobody would care
They
about
had their chance in '48. That was the
Nobody cares about them.
that both states should have declared independence then. That we wouldn't have a problem. But they declared war instead of independence.
Independence.
Keep living in Lululand. Goodbye, guys.
That's what the international law says.
What do you mean international law says you cannot declare independence in someone else's sovereign territory? Why not? Like, what are you gonna do?
What do you why not?
No, I mean, what are you going to do?
Texas says we're an independent
What
state.
are the legal consequences? What do you mean I can't do it?
I mean, you can say for example, if like the British had the ownership before with the mandate, right? And the independence was declared on the day when the mandate ended. So the territory changed hands, basically, right? At this
Yes.
point. Right. So if the state of Texas tomorrow decides to declare its independence, it's not going to change anything because I mean,
No, that wouldn't change. Like Texas's claim for independence would probably be effective. They have an old deal when they joined. They can divide it into 5 states if they want to. Might be
well, themselves maybe, but
yes.
would
No, they
they be independent from United States of America?
No, I mean, if they did the 5-state division thing, that would obviously still be America.
Right.
They would have federal recognition. All the states would immediately be joined, and they would have representatives. Because when Texas joined the union, they hashed out a plan to be multiple states if they wanted, but they never did. They just stayed as Texas. But Texas is also like a fairly self-sufficient, independent state that has historically been its own state.
It is kind of a state. Yeah, I agree. But that's the idea of America.
It's not kind of. It is a state.
It's kind of, yeah. It is. Yeah. It
If
is.
you try to start its own federation, though, then we would declare war. But that's what I'm saying. Like, they can still do it. I don't know what you mean when you say it's like illegal. There's just political consequences. Like, Texas could decide to join Mexico. And, like, what does America do to that? What does Mexico do to that? What does Cuba do to that? These are all genuinely good questions that have nothing to do with law.
It depends which law you're talking about. Again, international law is something that's governed by agreements, right? Agreements, principles, and just everything else. Okay. But again, I mean, if you say something that breaks the agreement, that does not, honor the agreements, then it's not legally like it's not something that.
No international law agreement treaties are very legally binding because they're made between sovereigns that do not acknowledge each other as having authority over the other. As a result, there is no adjudicatory body to respond to any complaints. One party has to get the other.
That is correct. That is
Which
correct.
is why it is not a contract. Okay?
But I mean, it actually follows from those agreements that
Well,
there are some
I'm trying to
there are some definitions,
Well,
right, of
like
what for example the state border is. How else would you define a state border?
What do you mean, how do you define a state border?
How do you define where the state has its border?
Well, you usually define things with words.
Yeah, but where? Where do you define it? In which document?
In which document do we see the confines of the borders? I don't know. Probably varies based on state.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Usually, it's the peace agreements or some kind of agreements with other states that have
I
borders.
would say usually, sometimes. Like, there are, meaning like, what's more pressing in the question of statecraft, like what is truly legal, is not the agreement between the states, it's the agreement within the state. The agreement within the state, where everyone agrees if you violate these terms, you deviate from these norms, you break these customs, there will be communal repercussions. That is the law.
But that's not international.
No.
I'm trying to understand what is international.
By right in the Constitution of New York State, the borders of New York State include the Hudson River, right? And I do this, that, and the other. And someone else writes next door, a different border, like Connecticut, I think actually happened. And they wrote their own borders, but they think this belongs to them. Those are just warring states. They are at this point in a state of conflict, and they have no recourse to go to a judge who can stop them from war. If they can deal with it diplomatically and civilly, we applaud them. But there is nothing about
And it results in the end, it will result in an agreement between them, right?
that define the border as much as the agreement within each state where they said the border was. The war is to compel the other state to change their mind
Bring
internally.
it to a logical conclusion. The example that you brought, bring it to a logical conclusion. If you have a warring state within two countries and they cannot agree on a border, that means the border does not
You
exist.
know, warring state
right?
within two countries. What does that mean?
Warring, like they're in war and a conflict, right? That those say that this is our territory, like Ukraine and Russia, for example.
Okay,
They say it's ours, right? And we wrote it in our constitution. That's it, right? That's enough. In in terms of their logic, that's not written in our constitution.
No,
We
I'm
don't
saying,
give a fuck what happens in
that's what I'm
Ukraine.
saying.
We wrote in our constitution that those territories are ours now.
So for
That's
the
not how it
information,
should work,
I
right?
could
Why do you say that's not how it should work?
Because it's just kind of bringing up, like, you know, that's the way World War II happened.
World War II happened because people had
Because Hitler went and divided Poland, because he went and annexed
that was a war of
Austria. Like,
conquest.
he just said that those are the new.
That wasn't just trying to like clean up the borders on the edge of Germany and Austria.
But that was actually the precaution. That's the thing that led to actually, like, then he made Russia and then like the Soviet Union or whatever. So he just said, okay,
Alarmo!
agreements.
Can you come to this room?
How else would it work break out? That's how Hamas said.
It's called McZad Podcast Law and Azza.
Wars break out because of the laws, as we discussed. The laws which are decided internally, standards of a region, which contradict or come into conflict with someone else's indigenous legal code. The areas of conflict where there is no court to answer the disagreements results in war.
Right, and usually prior to this war, usually there is an agreement between those two countries that this
No,
is
again,
the
not
border.
always.
We don't cross it like with our armies. We don't try to cross it like without going through the points with the where we show the passports or whatever, get visas and stuff like that, right? So there is an agreement usually before that, and then this agreement is breached.
No.
That's how the war starts.
Well, the war doesn't start with an agreement. It starts with some kind of a conflict.
With breaching of an agreement.
No, not breaching an agreement.
Because
Like,
prior to that, there is usually an agreement.
Because, like, what if a Russian just, like, shot up a community school and all of Ukraine decided we don't want any Russians in here anymore? Like, there's a million ways that wars start, and it's not based on, like, the terms of agreement. Like in America, with the or the Boston Tea Party.
Hey, just let me tell you. I mean, invasion, okay? Invasion. The worst way our armies cross to another state's territory, right? That's usually when you don't honor the agreements that you made prior to that.
Always in honor of agreements. That's like I don't know why you're. Let me ask you this: if
The peace agreement,
If-
that's the peace agreement defines the border.
if all international wars and conflicts start from the breaking of an agreement, why did they start making agreements?
Prior to the war, why did they have
Yep.
agreements?
Yep. Why did they have an agreement?
In order to start the war.
Why would
This
the
is
Pakistanis
you.
talk to the Afghanistan? Why would China talk to Vietnam or Japan? Why would Russia talk to Germany? Why would there be an agreement if there was never any kind of disagreement? A different way of seeing things, like a Russian way versus a German way of seeing things, because of those indigenous laws and cultures that see things differently. And then on border cases, like literal geographic border cases where you've got Russians living next to Germans, and the Russians see it one way and the Germans see it another, a conflict arises. And when cooler heads prevail, an agreement is reached. But because these are still two separate regions, developing completely separate sovereignties, separate rules, separate customs, separate moralities and judgments about the world, the agreement doesn't prevent the future conflict. The agreement is a marker, a record of the end of a certain conflict of the past. The agreement doesn't prevent
I
any
never said
conflict
the
of the
agreement
future.
should prevent the conflict. No, I said
It doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't. That's not what an agreement does.
No.
An agreement ends previous conflicts. That's it.
Yeah, and usually the agreement includes, and not usually, but in like 99% of the cases, the agreement includes the division between the two countries, and this very specific, like it usually even includes pictures, that this is the river, this is the mountain, this is where we draw this line, this is where, and we sign beneath that. And if you look at those peace agreements with Egypt and Jordan, you would see those pictures, and you would see those.
Why do you think everything is centered around the borders?
Because that's the thing that happened. I think in the 19th century or something, we started creating countries, and countries started to have borders.
So
That,
then
that,
New York
that was
was
like a very
being
important
modern,
thing to
somewhat
separate, as you said, the
average,
cultures
military
and the
conflict,
internal
right?
laws and whatever happens within each country.
So then
was
you
among
agree
others.
that this would be abnormal, correct?
What, the agreement between two countries?
The past 100 years of the 200,000 years of human history.
Yeah, I mean, we have this notion.
So
Yeah.
wars
We were
are
just
very
debating that,
rarely
right, and then
about
people
the
were
border.
colonizing or whatever, yeah. So we came to this idea because we saw that wars just break out because somebody wants to deny the territory they don't give a fuck. And we said,
Very
okay,
rarely think about the territory. I don't know why you think it's the territory. That's literally like a modern group that has 150 years maybe, mostly animated by America that took over. Like America was a secessionist movement.
Yeah, I mean, let's put America aside for a second, but usually colonialism, what is it? It's like we don't give a fuck about your borders, we're just gonna come in and set our laws, right? You don't have like a notion of borders.
No,
Your colony, you just come in, that's it.
No, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. It's not the history of colonialism. They very often did coordinate with the locals because guess what? They died when they didn't talk to the locals. They did talk to the locals. We traded with the locals, which is again one of the benefits of capitalism and colonialism. They traded guns, which were fairly cheap from their perspective, but invaluable to the Native Americans' perspective for the sake of hunting and fighting each other. As a result, they traded with them, and they had birds, which were all the rage in England. The whole reason, not England, Europe, the whole reason the Astor family has a giant, massive stone library that they donated to the island of Manhattan is because they sold beaver skins to fucking Europeans. Colonialism had borders. They made deals with each one of these locals. They traded with them. They spoke their languages. They intermarried with them. Some of the local Europeans would leave the European colonial areas and go live with the natives. It was not a war of conquest.
Before the formation of the states, which borders are you talking about?
The borders amongst the settlements, the colonies. The colonies established their borders. They knew where they lived. They lived close together. Do you really think they like spread out?
Yeah,
went far away? Well, think about it. The natives know every inch of this land. Have been living here for centuries. But I know we'll send my wife and kids to live 10 acres away from the nearest stranger. Because that'll be safe. They'll be safe from the natives. With no deals with the natives. No deals with the natives. Nobody there setting up forts, setting up walls, setting up troops to run patrols. Just out in the sticks. It didn't fucking happen. They didn't go out there until the Civil War. That's when you had a whole bunch of trained soldiers, both in the North and the South, and a bunch of land that could easily be grabbed to the west from the now militarily trained citizens and armed under the Second Amendment citizens of America. That's when West Virginia
That became to this idea that each state should have its own borders, right? And they drew them on the map, sometimes with a pencil.
States don't start by having their own borders. Smart organizations and people develop their own borders so they can better trade and make agreements with their neighbors. Not everybody does it. England tried to impose it upon everyone as a solution and technically also a problem to some of the world's problems. But the point of borders is developed naturally because of what the indigenous people want. The geography. Like, there's no reason it's always a river or an ocean that stops the fucking border. Because humans don't go past there, except in ships. And we can't control you anymore when you go out there. We limit our control by the actual fact of our reality. We end borders because of where people end the borders.
Where's the border between Israel and Egypt?
Gaza? What do you mean?
The whole Gaza is the border?
I mean, it's disputed, but yeah, that's why all of Gaza is roughly the border.
Nothing is disputed. There is an agreement between Israel and Egypt. And there is a
Yeah,
line there.
Egypt agrees to not control Gaza. And
Whatever they agree to. I'm asking about the border. Where is this line? Border is the line, right?
You tell me.
Where is the line?
Okay, so who the citizens that live within Gaza? What are they citizens of?
That's a very good question.
Are they citizens of a border?
No. what Egypt
clarifying,
considers
why don't
its
you
border
say
with
what you
Israel.
want to say?
It's Philadelphia. It's the Philadelphia corridor.
Okay, and therefore,
That's what Egypt considers to be its border with Israel.
and therefore,
And therefore, whatever Gaza is, right? I don't know what it is. You tell me now.
you don't know what it is.
What is Gaza?
What is Gaza? Could you say it's a community of people?
No, I mean in terms of like states or like who this territory belongs to.
Yeah, we'll get to states because all states
That's
are
the
communities of
territory
people.
has
But let's
any
start
borders
with baby
anybody.
steps. Would you agree that the people in Gaza are a community of people?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, would you say that they share a culture and language?
I guess. Yeah. I mean,
Would you say they share a region and a way of living that they all must cooperate with each other to continue?
Sure.
And you would say that this is not a state. Why?
Of course not.
Why not?
Because again, state should have borders with other states.
Should have. Let's say it doesn't. Why is it not a state now?
Because nobody accepts the borders
Nobody
of the state.
accepts. What if they accept it? What if they're like, yeah, we know exactly what we are. We're right here.
Okay. Put it in a document.
Or what if their borders are simple and they say that they control the entirety of Israel by their God-given right?
Put it in a document. Sign it with somebody.
Yeah, let's say they sign those.
Let somebody sign this document and say yes.
They do. What do you think the fucking Hamas charter is?
No, again, you can write any paper and like that's right into a toilet. Somebody else has to agree to that.
Yeah.
It's not just what you say. It's what you agree with it with somebody else.
But what you seem to think is that for some reason, all of the Palestinians agreeing with each other as to who and what they are is insufficient for you until people who are not Palestinian agree with them. And that I don't understand because you're wrong. America didn't wait for the world to acknowledge they were American. They just declared it. And then they
Jordanians are Palestinians. So it doesn't really matter if they're Palestinians, if they speak Arabic, if they live in Qurani, it doesn't matter. Jordanians have their own state, have their own borders, right? They have borders with Israel, they have borders with Syria, whatever, right? So they have agreements there that both sides, like whichever side you take, agree that this is the border of Jordan.
Okay, so you think that Jordan is
But
now
Palestinians don't have any agreement with anybody about their border.
are now null and void? Is Jordan also not a state? Is Israel not a state because Syria fell?
Israel actually has agreements. That's what I'm saying.
No. You're saying Jordan had an agreement with Syria. Syria fell. Does Jordan lose its statehood?
No, it doesn't. There is a problem with the border, and I mean, it should be established at some point.
But according to you,
Actually, yes.
according to you, if the essence of a border is the agreement between states, the destruction of one of those states should naturally absolve the other of following through on that agreement. Correct?
Well, I mean,
Who will object? Who will object when the other party is gone?
Mhm.
Who has standing? Who has standing to say, hey, Jordan, you can't put the borders over here because they're over there? Jordan says, you made that deal with Syria. You ain't Syria anymore.
And this is exactly what's happening now with Syria, because Israel is moving, for example, some of its forces, as you know, are in Syria, right? Near Damascus, like 50 kilometers from Damascus.
Them moving to prove your point.
And we have the Golan Heights, right? So,
That doesn't
then we actually, yes, we do define the border, and we really hope to agree that, okay, let's
correct.
guess
You are defining the border. You don't give a shit if Syria where Jordan does. Israel is independently defining their own border, just like every state does, and they pull back when other states push. When it's their own geographic region and statehood and organization, however they do, it is irrelevant if the entire world disagrees with them. All that means is that the world is to some degree at war or disavowing the existence of Palestine. Doesn't mean they're not a state.
It does.
Why? I don't know what this
Because-
thing is, Beck.
Because you cannot declare a state on the territory of another state. It just doesn't
Oh,
work.
is it illegal? Are you gonna take me to a state court and prosecute me? Do you even hear yourself?
No. I'm saying that it's not going to be accepted by that other state. I mean, unless it's a failed state and you don't care. But if it's not a failed state and it just exists, and you say, okay, now my territory, like I come to the United States and I say, this is my territory. I declare my state here. This Manhattan is my state now.
Yeah,
Is it going to work?
You could.
If I take firearms and I kill everybody who disagrees with me, it's
How
still
do you
going to
think we
work.
got up to 50 states? How do you think? We started with 13.
People agreeing with each other.
Nope, not always. Sometimes people just declare just a state. Like the Dakota territories. The territories for a long while. It was kind of an anarchy place where we're just running about.
But in
And then
the
they
end,
incorporated separate states.
people had to come to an agreement. People had to sign documents about that. If people had to draw something on the map, then both sides would agree to it. I don't know what we're arguing about. Anyway, comedian, I think you can close the room. Mike said this piece.
No, this is the song that goes on forever. You were McZed's dopamine fill for the day. Congratulations.
Yeah, I know. He could be very energetic.
So you stand with Israel, huh?
That's, yeah.
Do you know who Meyer Tobiansky is?
Yeah.
You should click the link above. He's the only person ever killed by the state of Israel outside of Eichmann. And he was a Jew. And he was wrongly executed with a lie, because the guy that killed him was a failure, and he put all the blame on this guy. He didn't have anything to do with it. He killed a patriot.
I think that might be the reason we stopped with the capital punishment, and we don't do it anymore.
But don't you think that's kind of fucked up that a terrorist will live in a prison, and he won't be executed for killing multiple people, and he'll be kept alive for a future prisoner swap? I mean, you don't think that is fucked up? Because, you know.
So you're like you're like advocating for capital punishment. That's what you're saying.
It's so hard to advocate for capital punishment, but I think you have to advocate for it. Like, because when somebody commits a terrorist, heinous act, especially, like if it's political and, ruthless. I mean, if it's there's got to be situations where people deserve the death penalty. Like this guy, Meyer Tobiansky, he didn't deserve it, but the point is he didn't get a fair trial. They called it a drum trial. And
Right.
so if there's real evidence and this person is a vicious monster and they're unsafe to be in society, it's like, why should we as citizens have to go to work every day to put a roof over this guy's head so he can eat and take a shit and sleep, in a nice prison with air conditioning all day long? I don't know, it just seems to me like,
Yeah, because
Kill the
that's
killers.
the question. Like, if you start practicing this capital punishment thing, at some point you will get to unfair trial. You will get to a trial that makes a mistake. And, I mean, it's just statistically, like, should happen, right? And then the question is, this person who like the judge, who made this, who made this case, and the person who actually pulled whatever, the trigger or the rope or whatever, they're like the killers, right? They now should suffer another capital punishment, I guess. So and that's the biggest problem with capital punishment. I understand the emotional thing, that terrorists should be put to death. I understand that completely. And usually that's what the Israeli army tries to do on the battlefield, not to bring them to justice to a court, but actually eliminate them there. But if somehow it already happened that this terrible guys in prison. I just don't think Israelis want, like, somebody has to pull the trigger, right? And somebody has to be the executioner, and that's like a terrible job. I know it sounds maybe like a bit, I don't know.
There will be no more starving.
But that's the kind of thinking that Israel has.
Yeah, but put
We
the
don't want to assign anyone to be in that.
but the thing is, you can automate a killing. The problem is, it's the lawyers and the judge who will now have to reap, you know, the blowback from that execution. So it's not really about the executioner's, you know, frame of mind.
It is also, for Israelis, it's very important. I know that it maybe sounds like a bit weird, but it is very important that the person exercises trauma, because his job is to kill people.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You don't need an actual executioner. You can just fully automate capital punishment. You just put the person in a tube, flood it with nitrogen, and you know.
Somebody has to press the button.
No, the person in the tube, it will just be automated. You know, as soon as that door shuts, it's just full automation, and that's it. You know, it'll be the prison guard essentially who walks him into the tube. But all I'm saying is, if everybody's broke and we're spending, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars on prisons, and there's lots of murderers and rapists and pedophiles and killers and robbers and people who are completely unhospitable to society, you know, I'm just saying, like, will we ever go the route for mass executions to save money?
Yeah, like even our tradition, like if we were saying, like, from a religious point of view, we had this thing with the boards, with the Sanhedrin, you know, I'm talking about like 70 sages, signing punishments, like doing the cases, basically doing the judge's work. And the practice was that if this court executed a person, at least one person, within 70 years, this court was called the Bloody Court, the Bloody Sanhedrin. And so it's not even, you know, it's not even in tradition. I know it sounds a bit weird, but again, that's the kind of mindset that these guys have. It's really hard to change. There are some people who are advocating for it, like you're saying, some far-right people, but it's not the majority. The majority are against it. Even understanding what you're saying, that why should we pay for them? Why should they, you know, just...
Well, the fucked up thing about a prison is it provides jobs. A prison provides jobs, so that's like the dual purpose of it. It's like all that money that goes towards the facility management. There's also people that work there, so it's like, I really do think that fiat currency is just like the biggest spam of all time, and that it's just inescapable. Like, you know, this, everybody's all upset about this new omnibus for $5 trillion in the U.S. and we're already $39 trillion in debt. It's just like, oh, it's more spam. But if we stop spamming, the whole thing just like stops. You know, there's no point to not just like creating more debt, because in the future you can just cancel the debt. You can come to a debt arbitration or some kind of debt forgiveness where it's like, oh, well, we don't really owe 50 trillion anymore. It's actually like 29 trillion. It's all just made up because it comes out in the inflation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's complicated. I mean, at least the way I read about it, it's actually the state of affairs that was created after the World War II, because, yeah, U.S. currency is something that all the countries in the world use as like the default currency. So U.S. has to print those dollars in order to stay this default currency, the default payment instrument for all the banks. And I mean, unless the U.S. wants to withdraw from it and say, okay, fuck the dollar, we're just going to be independent. It's not going to worth much outside of the U.S. And it's going to, like, I'm not really sure how it's going to affect the economy. The economy is all built around. So, yeah, I mean, Trump is trying to do something about it, but I don't think it's smart enough to do it. It's just the state of affairs that U.S. created for itself. changing would just cause a lot of damage. Alright, anyway, stand with Israel. I'm gonna go have a bit of a sleep. 3 a.m. here.
Only if you were a hot 25-year-old cis-football.
Peace.
acceptable to whatever condition they are coming. That is how we win the Muslims, brother.
voice.
Hey Yakov, what was the common wording for the poll that Israel came favorable?
Well, there was two polls. One was the Pew Research, which said, please indicate whether you have favorable or unfavorable opinion of the following countries, and then just did them all on a list. So they never just say Israel, because then you bias the results. Gallup broke it out between very favorable, mostly favorable, mostly unfavorable, and very unfavorable. And then 54% of Americans support a favorable view. So that's the combination of very favorable and mostly favorable. And 41% had an unfavorable view. So that was done within 3 weeks of the other one.
So when you were saying that the first poll, it was 0 and 1, so the second poll was like...
Yeah, sort of said, well, you really like them, you kind of like them, you really kind of don't like them, or you really dislike them.
We're making the same mistake over and over again. We think we're dealing with reasonable people. They don't tell the truth. They don't want peace. They want us.
My audience is not her. My audience is you guys. She makes that point, uses this poll, and then her whole argument is standing, or part of her argument is standing on it. And it's my job as a former pollster to say, this doesn't make any sense because you're not actually, you're not using the data as the data is,
By the time you respond to her with reason, she's already changed it. She'll go on to the next point.
Again, my audience isn't her, my audience is you, and I need to have a little bit more time.
Your audience isn't listening to her. She's just a raspy voiced crazy person who hates Jews and hates Israel. They disagree fundamentally with the existence of the Jewish state. Now, that's okay. You can disagree with France or Morocco or Algeria, whatever you want. But if you can try to destroy the land,
Not Algeria.
maybe not Algeria.
They don't have a favorable view of Israel.
This is my point.
I got your point, I was joking.
You can disagree with the country's existence, but if you try to wipe it out, that makes you a criminal. And that's the position that they take. They're going to get all sorts of rationale from
And she kept saying, oh, don't make this a religious thing or we'll destroy you and you'll go to hell.
Hamas made it a religious thing.
It's not religious war. We keep saying that, not religious war.
No, it is from one side.
Religious war.
They're the ones that make it religious.
Why do Muslims especially online, why do all the Muslims, for the most part, take one side? I mean, it's clearly...
Well, they don't even say it's not our name. They don't even say this isn't our religion. So,
The Muslim strategy of religious war is that this is the way how they can. This is how they can.
I think before the fundamental thing that you guys, norms, especially
sorry about that, Tom.
you don't get it. It's about weak and powerful. Anybody who is weak, even in the Vietnam War, there was a lot of Americans which were aligning against with the Vietnamese. They were like going into churches with American soldiers. Dead American soldiers were waiting and cursing them. Go to hell. What does this have to do with anything? Because Palestinians are weak and Israel is strong. So Muslims are weak and Christians are strong. So Muslims take the side of Palestinians.
Wait, you think
Like blacks take a side of Palestinians.
Wait, fine. You think an injured lion isn't dangerous? It takes real men to go into these apartment complexes to free hostages. They're not weak. They're armed to the teeth with rocket-propelled grenades, hand grenades, landmines, rockets. I mean, you're talking about tens of thousands of people that are armed to fight to the death. That is a powerful force to go up against.
I think he needs to say the underdog. People want to be the underdog, but Israel's the underdog, my friend. You have an Arab world that's infinitely one state surrounded by dozens of states. Israel is the so-called weak underdog.
Well, they're not bringing Gaza, though. I think that's what.
Well, that's the strategy. That's just.
Trying to suppress the movement is that it also means prosperity and peace, and that means and also representation of Islam. That's why we are recruiting 80% of the peaceful Muslim to fight Muslim brother. That is the fight. It's not about Gaza.
This is the part that you're wrong. When you have 1% of population holding 99.5% of the wealth in the world, you are losing. People are poor. People will side with poor and weak. People are not gonna, like for example, Americans are right now poor. They're struggling.
Americans are not poor, Weifan. I think you're giving a high.
Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers.
Communism, we know the numbers. Communism is failure. It's not on the table anymore. You're arguing from, I guess, a CCP point of view, man. That thing was from 1950s. It's failed. It doesn't work. It's over.
I don't think America's that poor, Weifan.
That doesn't make you poor.
They just passed a $5 trillion bill. Do you know any other people that can just create $5 trillion out of thin air, Weifan, and spend it? I don't.
Exactly. That's the cause. This $5 trillion is going to Elon Musk. It's not going to normal.
No, it's not going to Elon. Elon and Trump had a falling out today, and Elon's not getting any money for Starlink and SpaceX.
Elon Musk kind of people. This $5 trillion is going to the pocket of very, very few percentage of people. That caused the majority of people feeling that they're getting poorer.
Weifan, the world operates off of dollars, Weifan. If the U.S. stops printing dollars, there'll be a global recession. And you got to understand, I think all this currency is just spam. It's literally just spam, and we've got $40 trillion in debt of spam, and we spent hundreds of trillions of this spam. But the point is, I mean, it's a civilization. It doesn't go out of business. And there can always be debt forgiveness. And, you know, and that's what's going to happen. I mean, you can't stop the flow. The spice must flow.
I am with you. It's a very difficult problem. It's a very, very complicated problem. What I'm saying is that this problem is the cause that people are siding with jihadis, these ideas that, hey, we will bring down capitalism. We will bring down powerful. This is how people go out, like, you know?
But he's right. Like, it's basically, it is, when it goes to a protest, when you go to a protest, even though a lot of the Muslim attendees might have, like, Nazi-adjacent beliefs, it's going to be, you know, more far left ideologies.
Very complex, very difficult, doesn't mean we surrender. Okay? We are thinking the future of our children.
We surrender. Vietnam War was the exact
Vietnam War is when America in Vietnam led.
Kill a lot of people that surrender. Learn from history.
It's not a good example, because Vietnam is America in the middle of Vietnamese. We are now talking about jihadists in the middle of Western nation. It's a very bad example you are using, okay?
Israel is not a Western nation. Israel is in the Middle East, the same as Vietnam was in Asia.
It's a Western nation in the Middle East.
Outpost of Western civilization. It's the roots of the Western civilization. Check out your history.
No, Vietnam president was a Christian guy, the one that we were fighting on it. So it was the best organization in Asia.
Yeah, Weifan, just stick to 2025.
We're struggling
fail. It's over. Here we're fighting against Islamism. The Western world does not want Islamism. The Western world is the enemy of Islamism. And as Dave said, Israel is the tip of the spear for Western civilization in this struggle. That's what's happening here. We're fighting terrorism. Yes, I'm certain. And I think you're certain of it too, frankly. Who else is fighting Islamism? Tell me, who?
Well, if you mean tip of the spear in terms of fighting, yeah, you guys are enemy number one. That's what you're implying.
Enemy of Islamism.
Yeah.
Well, in America,
Best ally of this is Saudi Arabia. Of the American civilization. The only reason that after First World War, United States get a voice in the war, because like Britain and France totally kicked the American out of oil field of Iraq, and Italy was part of it too. So the only reason that American exists is because of Saudi and even
This is make it a habit. 10 minutes every morning, all the way. Look, we talked about killing her before. I mean, this.
Collaborate is part of the Christian world, and it's that kind of game that it's a dance. Yes, they are not like France, but they are like, for example, two different entities fighting for resources.
Yeah, but the problem with Muslims is that they're different from other people. There's what you see with them. There may be people who are like Christian and they're like, oh,
Tommy, you ain't killing a cop anytime. Amy?
They're the only group of people that I see that are foreigners that weren't even born in that country. Not only are they not going to assimilate, but they expect people to take on their culture and their culture.
Take it easy.
It's not more like that.
You want to take a shot, Tommy? Take a shot. I'll make it your best because I get up, I eat you.
I do not.
That's I'll deal with it. Like, better than reward. What do you think of it?
That's why I've said for the longest time, I get everybody to say I'm not like
Jacko.
Europe is an abomination. I think it will lead to wars.
Tommy.
Like internal civil wars.
Watch yourself.
they're going to have to reverse the situation that they're in.
right?
Mr. Martirano, you are one of the most feared men in Boston and well known as the chief executioner for the Winter Hill Gang. Is that correct?
They start fighting
Yes.
for power.
You are also reputed to have murdered some 20 people. Would you say that is accurate?
Yeah, I've seen it.
That is accurate, yes.
British for the British.
Mr. Martirano, I want you to be as specific as possible in answering why the war between the Chulos and Winter Hill escalated.
Should not have
Territory.
I don't know,
Specifically South Boston.
a fucking
Yes,
sultan or a
South
leader
Bay. The Chulo want to control everything. Home shocking, vending machines, all the rackets. And there were consequences.
Yeah, as you noticed,
Yeah, there was consequences.
China, where this is exactly happening in China. China is showing the West. This is how you deal with Muslims.
What Nazi were doing, this is what Hitler.
I'm okay with a lot of the things the Nazis did.
Oh, wow, oh my god.
On the stage for some of those events. So I'm going to say this very, very briefly. I'm a friend of El Norm. I love El Norm, but I think he has a blind spot on this issue, and I'm going to be very brief here. Okay? Yeah. Hindus, millions of Hindus wanted to move to Israel and then vote in blocks so that a Hindu would be the prime minister of Israel. And there were Hindu temples being built all over Israel, and Hinduism was taught in the schools. I personally believe that Norm would be against letting millions of Hindus move into Israel, because Norm knows that Israel will die if Hindus move there. Israel will die, and Norm wants Israel to continue as a homeland for the Israelis for 1,000 years. However, I'm being very brief here. Please let me finish, Norm. Just let me finish. I'm going to my plan. I'm saying this as a friend. However, at the same time, if 1 billion Hindus want to move to Britain and replace British culture, Norm is happy with it. If 1 billion Hindus want to move to America, so I believe. I know, but Norm, I'm about to land my plane. I'm not attacking you. I love you. Just let me land my plane. I humbly speak as a loving friend of Norm, that Norm has a tremendous blind side. He cares about preserving Israel forever as a homeland. He doesn't care if Hinduism destroys Britain, America, and Canada. Okay, I'm done speaking.
No, because Canada and
Okay, no
some
worries,
part
we'll
of
love to see Elvis. It's not sure. I submitted my driver's license and my email
and
back.
they are stopping
Waiting
visa
for a
for this,
response, probably identified as spam.
So they are already
They are circumcised, all what have to do eventually on
so normal, I would say this. I think you recognize that Jews need to remain the majority of Israel. What makes it a country that is kind of Jewish spirit is just the Hebrew, all the stuff that are the Jewish people. The Jewish people, you replace the Jews in Israel, it's no longer a Jewish country. I offer the same thing to the Thais, to the Dutch, to the Iranians, all of them. I think that it is always in their best interest to remain the overwhelming majority of their population. Because these are their homelands. It's a little bit different in New World countries where, we're more founded by immigrants. But when it comes to homeland, Asia, like in Asia, Europe, and Africa, they should absolutely not allow themselves to be replaced by immigrants. They are made up by their people.
For a response, probably identified as spam.
Not like China. China is not producing, right? China also has problems.
Now you are going to take a from overseas too.
Yeah, we're going to change all these things, right?
So you are not blaming immigrants. The reason that your politicians are letting immigrants in because you are not making fucking babies.
Now we will be changed. Now they learn, they know the problem now, so they're going to change that, right?
Okay, so let's see, I was not sure.
I agree with East Asians. East Asians, it took them much better, even though in China, Japan, and South Korea, their birth rates are completely crashed. They're still, they're taking some.
I'd managed to make at least one of it before.
They're not willing to mass import people like Western countries do. I think that is good.
Still managed.
Well, what is good about the Japan economy has stagnated for 30 years. The rate of
Where are you from?
I'm American.
Which country are you from?
Iran.
Iran. All right. Well, okay, so it's hard to compare with your country because nobody really immigrates there. But
yeah, those the Japan is better to have the.
So I'm saying you cannot blame Indian on this. Blame your own people for not making babies. German or French. Why they're not making babies?
Look, it's better to have the economic stagnation than to have mass immigration to destroy the society.
You are not a politician. You are just like somebody who likes to talk about, how great Christianity is. It's not how it works when you are in charge.
Why is China interested in doing it?
What's that?
Well, South Korea and China and Japan, yes, it's causing problems for them, but at the end of the day, they understand what culturally and ethnically committing suicide is. That
See, I was not sure if some of the major resistance in the
absolutely change your culture.
They have no other choice. What can they do?
But then they'll no longer be Japanese. They commit suicide.
Yeah.
Why do you? That's cultural erasure. Why would you want to do that?
Because if you don't do that, you will die anyway. If you do that,
it means that they go through a period of hard times, but doesn't mean that future generations won't improve.
If you let them in, right? If you let the jihadists in, not only you die, you get beheaded. That is even worse. Okay? That is a difference. We want to choose a life. We are not become beheaded.
Is Trump solving the problem,
No, he's not even. Like, this is all showmanship. Like, he's not going to deport all the people that came in under Biden. The fact is, what drives immigrants to come here is, first of all, there's a very low likelihood of deportation, and there's a nearly 100% guarantee they'll be able to make a better living than they would back home. And there's a ton of people that are willing to, exploit their cheap labor. So it's all of the drivers are set there in place. How do you stop that? You don't.
Elon Musk's robot is learning 100 skills a day.
Elon hates her, prefers ketamine.
Will be replaced by robots.
I mean, the way you do it is you limit immigration.
Oh, I know how it's done, but with the American allowed in, except for very few people, and just and literal mass deportations, like what we'd have seen in the 40s and 50s. I don't think so. I think that too much of the public is against that.
You mean from Europe or from America?
From America, like.
We had mass deportations?
Oh yeah, like Operation Wetback, we had, and even when it came to the, what do you call it, the Nation of Origins quota that we had, you know, there was too many Italians and too many Eastern Europeans and Jews coming here for people's liking, so they put a cap on that shit too. I mean, they turn a whole fucking ship of people from those countries around. I mean, does the American public have the heart for it?
One way to address the labor problem is many young Americans understand the risks of AI, so they are all learning handcraft now. They learn how to repair the pipe, they learn how to be a carpenter. These are AI resistant jobs, right? So they are doing that right now, and this will replace the dependency of cheap labor. So the era of cheap labor is over. We don't need that anymore.
You look at Taiwan, right?
Especially come in to destroy and to weaken the environment.
Well, you guys are like have a very ideal situation because despite your birth rates, you can always.
Anyways, we'd like to
Since
see
it's a
how
small
this one
country,
goes.
you can always take the cream of the crop
Sure,
from countries like China and like a second India. But you guys can always have a supply of people that are capable.
Anybody from Taiwan? Are you from Taiwan? Anybody from Taiwan?
I thought it was like a Romanian one. Oh, it's Taiwan.
The country that has the highest birth rate, country that has the highest birth rate could be same as Israel. So we just have to figure out the formula.
Let me tell you why Taiwan is successful and China.
I thought you were specific for it.
In Taiwan, there are a lot of five branches. There are three. So there is an examination branch and there is a cultural branch. You know,
No,
listen, Israel is the first line of defense for the West. I think Israel knows in the United States.
you know, he brought up the birth rates. He said that I know. But I think that only they can't be like Israel in terms of birth rates. Unless we have the same population. Sure. I would say there's only a few populations in America that get old. If we were to look at like just primarily, if you just look at the white demographics, yeah, it's pretty much that birth rates you take everywhere. One of the exceptions where I used to live in Alaska, white people, I guess there's not a lot to do. You're stuck indoors for a large part of the year. So they have higher than replacement rate. The one big group, though, is the Mormons.
For the best show in culture.
And I do think that when you get like a Middle Eastern Jewish population, which is, I guess, historically known for having slightly higher birth rates, then you have the Orthodox Jews that have a lot of kids. I mean, you just have like a much higher level of religiosity in this nation, which is correlated with higher birth rates. We're not, our population isn't that religious, so how do we do that?
Exactly, making religions. That's exactly the solution that you have to make.
You can't make people.
You can. Yes, you can.
That's usually handed down by family.
No, Mormons can't, like,
No, we're secular country.
I know, but can they, because religious in the secular world. Like, by starting not fighting one religion or religion, like Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, now they have to come together. That's how you make it.
No, I mean, until we can see like maybe decades, and I mean, that's being gracious, where Muslims play nice with all of the other religions and other, you know, people in their vicinity, and they're not hostile in the nations that they end up immigrating to. I guess we can think about it, but until then, that's this whole thing about Islamophobia and don't be bigoted. Well, if what you see has occurred for centuries all throughout the world on every continent. with Muslims, you are literally playing fool's poker for the sake of not looking bigoted. Basically risking suicide by letting these people in. So my answer is no, absolutely not. And I think it's perfectly reasonable.
Are we looking at the end of, and I think this is what you're saying, Scooby, before, we're looking at the end of the idea of democracy. Is that what you're saying, Scooby?
That's not what I'm saying. I actually think making a separate point for it. I'm making a point specifically about the education things. And I'm not trying to pick on you, Norm. Or some people on Clubhouse, that's double standard, some people on Clubhouse should say, there's one country that I really love that I'm going to protect from the UK and France and 40% Muslim immigrants. I think it's double standard. There's some people that value their own country. You know, I won't. I'm not accusing you of saying some other people financially save this video. Some countries not us. That's what I'm saying. I'm not speaking about it. So I don't want to sound tomorrow at 4 p.m. God will save
I would say this is for, I would say well over a decade when I pick up on it, but the biggest problem is unfortunately one that is largely, I would say, it tracks. It's what I largely see. When you have Zionists, they are very adamant about what they want. They want to with the peace, they want to same place where everyone prosper and all of that. And we have it. And but they're very clear about the demographics. They know that they can't have a two-state solution. Why? Because you will have a large population there that will eventually outnumber them. We know what will happen. One state, yes, one state solution. But what we see with a lot of these Zionists is that when you give that idea, say, well, hey, but how about France and Germany? Well, you know, it's kind of like, oh, well, you know, when they were very nationalistic, look what happened in World War II. I don't know, I don't like that. Well, you have to be charitable enough to want to give that same opportunity to everybody in everybody's homeland for us to really side with you guys. And that is...
Israel has an opinion about Europe. Why does Israel have an opinion about Europe?
Norm, I think I speak Pepe's language, so why don't just give me permission to respond. Pepe, what you say is true of a very small percentage of Zionists. So yes, what you're saying is true. There are some Zionists that have double standard. There are some Zionists that say Israel should be protected from 1 trillion Muslim immigrants, but Europe should be forced to take 1 trillion Muslim immigrants. If that is your criticism of some Zionists, it's true. However, Pepe, I have to, as a friend, I have to say, you are wrong when you suggest that's the majority of Zionists. It's a small position. So the majority, and I'm going to be brief here, the majority of leftists, both on Clubhouse and on college campuses, they are consistent. The majority of leftists want to flood Israel with so many Muslims that the Jews were all killed. And the leftists want to flood Europe with a lot of Muslims. The leftists are evil, but they're consistent. Then at the same time, and I'm about to land my plane, there are a lot of nationalists that are both Zionistic and they want to protect Europe. So I would say Netanyahu is very, very close friends with the Hungarian nationalists, with the Polish nationalists. Netanyahu wants the same rules for Europe. So, Pepe, your criticism of Zionists only applies to some Zionists, and I would feel more comfortable sharing stage with you if you made it clear only some Zionists have a double standard. And I'm done speaking.
Well, I haven't talked to all of them. The tricky situation here in America, as you know, is that like roughly 80% are going to be either left of center or further left in America. So it's getting an American Jewish person who's likely to be Zionist that would agree with me. I mean, it's already demographically they're going to be in a minority.
Pepe, you're a Zionist. You're not a Jew. Scooby, I think you're a Zionist. I can't say any more than that. I'm not sure why both of you are generalizing about people who are not in the room. I don't see how Jews and or Zionists and or Israelis, basically, which are all the same thing in a way, why do you think that they have any sway over what Europe does? Israel is interested in America. Israel is interested in its neighbors. Israel is interested in the Arabian Peninsula. Israel doesn't have any power over Europe, and Israel isn't even interested in doing so. What's amazing to me is one thing that October 7th revealed that I think much of the world didn't realize is that Israel is much stronger than anybody anticipated. It's just much more advanced militarily, and it's much richer. I mean, it's been able to carry this war on forever. The whole population has been mobilized to deal with 7 fronts. Nobody's really talking about this.
Norm, let me respond to what you said very
Well, how about if I name the fronts first? Okay, Hezbollah, I mean, an amazing victory. Syria, an amazing victory. Yemen, they're in their box. They aren't doing anything. Iraq attacked. They dare not again. Iran attacked. We attacked them 3 times this hard, took out their air defenses. They dare not attack again. Hamas, the entire Gaza Strip is devastated. So Israel has won on a 7-front war. And everybody's like, oh my God, Israel, like the Western civilization is on its back legs. Well, who's more powerful than Israel in the United States? And I turn it over to you, Scooby.
Okay, so I'm going to be very brief. Let's assume for the sake of argument that Israel is strong and triumphant and it's wonderful and everyone in the room is celebrating that everything is great in Israel. Let's just assume that. The policies of allowing immigration in Europe have destroyed the Jewish communities in Europe. So, it's easy for you to Google it.
You know which app is a trap? Google Play Cam. How come no one has done what he told you? He seems to be involved in every crime in the city, and yet the Bureau keeps saying it's clean. It's only when another agency has an informant that he maybe when he isn't so sweet and clean. Well, he didn't age very careful. He doesn't use phones. That kind of stuff. What did you see these other phones?
It's not only causing the extermination of people, it's quickly causing the extermination. The policy of allowing
his criminal days are over. His partner, he gone legit crush calling. He's when he never uses his phone to careful or his way to retire.
I don't agree. I just hear saying that honestly.
I mean, I'm not in my office. These are things that I hear. I don't know if all of them are true. Your job and find out.
All religions. Let's say Pepe the
How's your brother? How's Jimmy? Here's Jimmy. You know, your ass. Most simple in the South than it was on the 60, 70 slings. But your brother and his winter hellboys, they're still out there. They must be doing something right. Jimmy's business is sure as hell ain't none of mine.
Yeah, but here's the problem.
They got it. You need to eradicate the mafia.
Okay.
And I know Jimmy and Steve Fleming are muscling in on their numbers records and their vending machines. And I know that this ain't sitting very well with Aunt Jula when they hear this. You hear this, Billy?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of an
Yeah, brother.
voting block. You know, it depends on the time.
He's waiting in some very dark waters.
But they're not seeking to destroy us. They're not appalled by our culture and offended. In fact, they have the same reason as us. They don't commit terrorist attacks.
Nobody gets out of their own right direction.
They're not seeking to impose their way of life onto us.
You know what, John? Good to see you doing so well. Really it is. Give my regards to the boys at the plaza. You don't want to get that change, fine. Just tell them I said. Hello, and I'm back. Hello, Jimmy wants to get in touch. You'll find it, trust me. You got to. I am not very good authority that Gennaro and Julu is playing heavy version. that so? And how did you plan to achieve that? That's the kind of information that I should have guessed. And that's the kind of information I need to provide. Try to get what I do to rest. He ain't glad, Jimmy. He's an alliance. An alliance between you and FBI. Between you and me. I can help you, Jimmy, and you can help me. I'm not trying to clean up shop. I love this place. I'm interested in the North End. I'm interested in the mafia. You are too.
Okay, sir. Let me put it like this. I would take
China goes out. China has two huge
That's the good.
goes out.
It might help you call the White Bulger's ex-convict. And then its parole category is supervisory status and designation that we would be required to get withdrawn or else we would be in violation of Bureau regulations. We withdraw or we violate. But we don't do unless we're critically insane. He just pulled his chance.
all moved into the cities. They're more
Anyway, it's Jimmy, not Whitey. And one thing seems so sure
like Japan.
that he's gonna be reliable. So Jimmy, his brother Billy, and me,
Even in Africa, Africa's
is a bar that doesn't get broken.
replacement
When he gives me his word,
Look at
he'll keep it. So rely on the word of our mouths.
I think
Guys, like now, serious about bringing down the Italians. Jimmy is the only way. Just trust me.
and what's happening in Mexico is becoming more industrialized. It's just
I think that we have more gangs in this. I think we go with John.
you said that
I think we bring Whitey. I'm checking.
the country is like an economic zone or it's an idea of shared values. I actually my country,
I want to get out.
a lot different. So I'm just not gonna agree.
I can take you to the road tonight.
Sure, but what you just heard is that's not involved. Take the money, take the money, take the money. Okay. I should go now? Yeah, you should go now. Thank you. You're welcome.
I see there's stuff that would be very inappropriate online.
What?
No, I
Did you marinate the steak? Because it's sour. So why don't you kill it? No. It's a family secret. Come on, you gotta tell me that. Come on, you could do it. What's the family secret recipe? It's ground garlic. Open a soup. That's it.
grasp what the American
I
does.
thought it was a family secret.
No offense, but I mean, the immigrants we get are not Muslims. So few of them
What's
are.
the recipe?
And I'm just going to be honest with you, Muslims tend not to sit well with any, despite their racial.
You said to me this is a family secret. You gave it to me, boom.
You guys just don't have a good communication with all your people.
You spilled the secret family recipe today. Maybe.
Yeah, no, I'm American. I'm American for the religion. What I'm saying is that Muslims are the newest religion. You need to teach them, and you need to teach them, and they learn how to communicate, how to not kick, how to not bite. Right point. They can be taught if you are a kind person.
I think there's
Go
only
back
one
to
way to
fucking
do it.
Christianity. If you go to Christianity root and give them love, they will learn. I have been teaching them, and they learn. It's just your arrogance and racism.
It's not arrogance. No. First of all, you can look at some of the most radical Muslims are going to be like people that look more like me, the Chechens and Dagestanis, who are like they were extremely overrepresented, fighting for Al Qaeda and the Taliban. These are very violent people, very Islamist. Now, I'm sorry. I'm just being pragmatic. I'm not saying this like out of emotion, but I do think there are groups that, like the kind of like what happened with the Assassins. There's
there's no, they can't be redeemed. It might just be that, somebody centuries ago would have poisoned their wells, starved them, and left none of them alive. Because they're just that difficult. And then, practically, I think almost like a Chinese concentration camps, where it is literally, Islam is flushed out of you. It's gone. From birth. You just, it's not it. You basically are indoctrinated to be a normal fucking person. Other than that, I don't think you can work with Muslims. I mean, who was it? Was it General Jack Cushing? After World War I, he said that. It's always important. He said that Islam to man is what rabies is to a dog. It's too toxic of a religion.
I always differentiate Muslim 80% and the other radical and jihadist Muslim. We always have to not to say Muslim, but the political and radical Muslim. These are the problem, not the other.
And they can all live in their own Muslim countries.
The 80% Muslim, they are happy to live where they are. It's the political Islam, they're doing caliphate to the Western civilization. And these are the ones that causing problem. So don't use Muslim. The peaceful.
No, fucking, it's Islam. No, their prophet was literally a
So
fucking
to go to heaven
warlord.
for murder.
He was a rapist. No, he was an enslaved people. He was a horrible human.
The moment you say this, Z will say religious war, and then we lost. Always focus on radical Muslim and political Muslim.
Dave is coming around. Dave is coming
No,
around.
no.
Now he's become Christian.
No,
and he must-
that is how you lose. That is how you fucking lose. Everybody gets so scared of the fucking term Islamophobic. And then you allow, basically terrorist-funded care to, every time there's a terror attack in the United States, what do? They don't apologize on behalf of Muslims or say prayers for the family. They immediately go start crying. What about Islamophobia? What about Islamophobia? They make themselves out to be the fucking victims. They end up doing damage control. They start attacking anybody who says anything about their, basically about their religious beliefs.
Like Jews. The same thing.
Well, I think they throw around anti-Semitic way too liberally, but they're not really committing terrorist attacks, so it's just like different.
I think people are poor, you are pushing them to radical. When people are poor, you push them to radical. So if you want to
Fucking ass.
like that.
Yeah, and Latin American who are poor, and South African people are poor, they don't go around. Okay, make it clear. These are jihadists.
I mean, go to Mexico, go to the cartel.
Now you're talking gang violence. Amazing.
I mean, when people get poor and under pressure, they get radical. They show radical.
It has nothing to do with, but you keep on saying poverty. I understand that when there's wealthy countries, like the Gulf Arab states, and they have a king that can basically rule with an iron fist. Sure, everybody's comfortable and living well, but I would even argue that although it may be a good quality of life for those people, people that visit, they still basically practice modern day slavery. The women still don't have rights, and they basically don't have a democracy. And I think that and they don't have the freedoms we have. And I think it's because these people cannot do that. I think Westerners and Europeans in general, we're different. And just culturally, we're much different. Oh yes, we are. We're much different.
It's all about like when you have a hopeful future, you will get along with people you have desire to live. When you have a desire to live.
Then why did your prophet go around killing everybody and saying kill them where you find them? They do not accept the Quran. Why did they do that? Why did they continue doing it for centuries? Why did they do that? Why did they humiliate or kill anybody who does not convert to their religion? No, it's a fucking religion. It's still the fucking practice.
No, now it's changed. That was like.
No, it's not. You guys pushed out all of your ethnic fucking minorities because you treated them so badly.
Romans did that, like Persians did that, everybody did that,
Well,
Chinese did that.
you're doing this. It doesn't ruin your religion. garbage.
Any religion is garbage in that sense. I'm telling you, any religion is garbage. Now we are.
No, my religion is not garbage like yours, respectfully.
You are the one who are not making babies and disappearing because you gave up your religion.
He's the one making baby and brainwashed to kill all Jews, okay?
I mean, you basically are terrorist breeders. That's all you guys are.
Hello?
And you're not Muslim, so you're fine.
We have a woman in the room, please. And uncle.
But no. He's trying to sit here and tell us that Islam's not the problem.
Let's
The problem.
voice. Instead of I and you
Pepe, let me talk for a second. You're getting wound up. You can still talk afterwards.
One, is everyone capable of sinning? Everyone.
Is everyone capable of what?
Of sinning, of doing wrong.
Of course.
Right. So what's going on is that's what's going on. And we all have been there and done something wrong. Whatever he's saying on audio app, I don't know. I mean, we don't even know these people. Like, I'm sick of having the same stupid conversations, and I end up, like, finding myself in the room for hours, and then I leave, and I'm like, what did I get out of that? Nothing. Like, let's find something, like, productive to talk about.
No, this is the topic.
Well, that's fine, that's the topic, but can we talk productive?
Did you apply for any jobs today, Ann? I know you, this morning you said you don't have a job and you can't get a job because of the mortgage industry sucks. Did you actually apply for any jobs today, Ann, or are you just here to get more dopamine again this evening?
I did a bunch of jobs today, and thank you for checking up on me.
But here's the problem, okay? You said those who sin. I agree. Now, here's some of the differences between Christians and Muslims. In fact, Saddam Hussein used to like to have a lot of his closest people around him to be Christian for a number of reasons. But actually, I won't even get into that. But you don't have to worry about Christians being suicide bombers. Why? Because when you murder yourself like that, there's one place you go, it's hell. Muslims go to heaven. They go to heaven and they get virgins. It is okay to pillage and rape and steal women as brides.